what are some of the biggest things and biggest ways that you've grown as a person and as a fighter since the beginning of your Bellator tenure? Because obviously so much has changed, I'm sure, for you over the past 2 years in and out of the cage. Like, talk to me a little bit about how you've changed as a person, as a fighter since then.
Yeah, so let's start with as a person. Um, let's I had a one-off fight with Bellator. That was probably 2021 in August. So if we're going that far back, I didn't even have a child yet at that point. It was just me and my wife. And shortly after that, the next month, September, my son was born. But if we're gonna go off of, my recent run with Bellator, man, I had started off with one kid in that run. Now I have two kids. So as a person, I've just had to become more mature in that aspect as a day-to-day life and becoming a father and having to navigate that space. Separate, but also included with my fighting. My boys are they come to my workouts once or twice a week, every week. Me and my wife and my boys, they all come with us, and we have a family day, and we just go watch that at train. So it's nice to see myself grow in that aspect. And as a fighter, man, I set a new standard to myself mentally every fight camp of like, okay, now I know you can push this hard. So this is the new standard. Before it was like down here, but then it's like one little step more, and then one little step more, and I keep track of those mentally. I'm like, I know I can do this for 8 weeks. I know I can do this for 10 weeks. So we need to go, that next one. I need to up it just a little bit more. Then I need to up it just a little bit more and figure out what my new standard is. And my new standard is, and someday you're going to reach the ceiling where you're going to have to just probably maintain because you've reached so high, right? And it's nice to know that mentally and physically, I'm able to find new levels to push myself. It's not always just a harder workout, but a lot of it is, most of it, honestly, is just mentally, like getting tougher mentally through these workouts to be able to see my new standard, to see, okay, maybe 4 camps ago, I might have folded a little bit on that, but now, I'm chest high, chest big, eyes looking up and just walking forward and doing it. So a lot of growth, more so mentally than actually physically.
A cliche that gets thrown around too is that when you become a parent, it changes you, right? Especially as an
Yeah.
athlete, with your schedule and time management and all that stuff. Like, have you felt that so far? Like, do you feel like a changed person since you became a parent?
Yeah. For sure. Obviously, the down to the root of like psychologically changing once you become a parent. Obviously mothers have it way worse, but I'm sure there's, when you break it down to science, there's some things that men go through too psychologically that just change. But when it comes to just like my training routine and schedule, yeah, I come home from training. Right now, I changed my routine up to training twice in the morning and then coming home for a rest, and then once again at night. Before, I was just doing all three and then coming home. Man, that rest that I thought I was gonna rest when I come home to two boys that have not seen dad since last night, man, that's not as much of a rest as you think. But I wouldn't have it any other way. There's as much as I want to come home and just jump in bed and take a quick nap and then go to my next training session. It's so nice to walk in the door, open it up, and two boys running in, two happy, smiling, grown, strong, healthy boys running in, da 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 da, and that eats up my time. So that is almost rejuvenating more than taking that nap.
And obviously, it's so early in their lives at this point that it's interesting to even discuss this. But have you thought about, like, eventually down the line, like if they express interest in getting into combat sports and MMA or anything like that, like would
Yeah.
you be a proponent of that? Because some fighters say, no, I wouldn't let my kids do that. Some people would. I mean, it kind of is different person to person. Like, how do you feel about that?
Um. Well, I would definitely. My boys are definitely going to wrestle. That's for sure. That's They're gonna have to try it out, and then after they try it out, if they say they don't like it, then that's what it is, and we'll find something else to do. But they're gonna have to wrestle. And the fighting side, if that's something that they wanted to do, I would. It's not that I would be against fighting because I'm a very happy person and I know that I'm loving and I'm educated and smart. But it has to do more so with my concern of taking impact to the head at such a young age. So I would not want them to fight. They could train, but I wouldn't want them to fight until they're more developed for sure. I would support their if that was really what they want to do and they turned 18 and they're like that, I want to fight. I would support them because I know that I'm a successful, happy person, so they can equally be that or better. But no, I didn't take my first blow to the head like actually trying to, trained punch me until I was like 23. My brain is really developed at that point versus, a 7-year-old trying to do that. I'm not sold on a headgear and some puffy gloves for my kid.
And you say they'll have to wrestle. Can you talk to me a little bit about that? Like, is it because of, dealing with potential bullies down the line or just self-defense or just staying active, or what's kind of your reasoning behind that?
Well, I wrestled from 4 until, well, I guess I still wrestle now.
Mm-hmm.
So I just know what wrestling has done for me um, mentally, being the biggest. Like I'm very confident in myself. Um, but also like it's just led me in past like without wrestling, I wouldn't have gotten the scholarship to go to Wyoming. Without that, I wouldn't have met my wife. Without that, my boy's going to be here. Like that's it all trends back to like the sport of wrestling, and it just takes you obviously the discipline and the things like that. But um, wrestling does become life at some point. Sports do become life at some point. And like I said, like if it wasn't wrestling, they have to play something else. They have to figure out a different sport. But it's gonna be wrestling, and if they don't like it can be something else. But I just know how the disciplines of wrestling play a factor in real life. Like you can get beat right now, and in 10 minutes you have to go get back up and wrestle somebody else. Like that has to happen. Or you could win right now, and then you have to get back up in 10 minutes and go wrestle somebody else, and then you can lose, and then you have to go wrestle again. And in the same day, within 30 minutes, you can do that. And that could be life, very much so. You can wake up one day and just be super happy, then you get in a car and you get in a car wreck. But your kid also has a doctor's appointment later in that day. Are you just gonna skip the doctor's appointment as well? Or are you gonna, you gotta figure these things out. And it's not I think wrestling just is a very good model of what real life is compared to other sports.
And when it comes to your career specifically, like facing all of these, you know, really proven veterans, and you're facing another proven veteran in this next fight too, like how much valuable experience do you feel like you personally are getting from, facing these veterans, facing guys that have been around the sport for a long time? Like how much of a confidence booster is that for you?
Yeah, I think I'm getting a lot of confidences in myself, like being able to understand that when the lights are on, I will perform. That's nice to know. Obviously, it was nice to know it when doing it on the smaller stages or, less dangerous of opponents, less skilled, less experienced of opponents. It's nice to know it then. But, when you're jumping into a fight with somebody who's a world title challenger, he's got 30 fights, the next guy's got 26 fights, and this guy's got 23 fights. It's nice to know that when the lights show on, it doesn't matter. I know that Archie Colgan is going to show up and perform. So that is nice and that's needed. Um, I'm excited to get another opportunity to do that again, and more excited to get back to my finishing ways.
And speaking of experience too, I got to ask you too, like, what are some of the most valuable lessons that you've taken from working with guys like Kamaru and Justin, and seeing how, they've handled being a professional fighter and, kind of just going through that whole process? Like, what are some of the biggest things that you've taken away from working with them?
Well, um, to be honest, it's probably just that they're just normal people, right? And you from the outside, um, you start to believe that these guys are a little bit different. They're wired a little different, or they're just a little stronger. They're built for it, and they were actually bred and made for this. And it's not. They're normal people just like you and I. And there's days that they walk into the workout and they do not want to do the workout, and they get tired just like you and I. And body gets hurt just like you and I. They're not superhuman, And that was probably one of the biggest eye openers, was just like, man, they're just a guy who gets ready and prepares himself mentally and physically for his fights, for his workouts, for his day, just as I do. He's just done it, 15 more times than me, and gets paid a lot more money at the moment. But at the end of the day, they're just normal people. And it's cool to see that and experience it at an early age. I was an amateur when I first started. Before my first amateur fight, I was training with Justin. And then, I met Kamaru, probably my first pro fight. So, just from an early age, being around that and seeing that and being like, dang, these guys are just normal people who work their ass off, and they become unnormal. They become, right, an anomaly. They become these people that are special, but they started from just a person. And then through the hard work and the disciplines, they became a special person. But it wasn't just born special and stayed special. It was more normal, built, became special.
And as you continue to find success too, I gotta ask you, because now it's like we're talking about potentially title shots down the line for you, right? In terms of getting into that title picture, in terms of seeing how Justin and Kamaru have really handled themselves, is that something that you really want to refocus on? Is just keeping that even keel as you get more success and more exposure in the media and all that?
Yeah, I definitely would probably get smacked up by my mom if I acted a fool in the media. So mama would not be happy with that. But yeah, I just don't think that's me. I don't want to sell my soul to disrespecting and saying things that I don't truly believe. I will, if I said things that I believe that is not taken kindly by the media, that's just what it is. At least I'll stand on that and be like, that's what I think, that's what I believe. But yeah, I don't plan on going out there and acting a fool and saying these wild, outlandish things to people or about people just to, get a couple extra dollars. But yeah, I'll be me authentically, maybe talk a little shit and do things like that for sure, but not some extravagant Colby Covington style stuff.
Couple more questions for me, man. Once again, it's really great to chat with you, catch up with you a little bit. I got to ask you, in terms of this fight specifically, obviously, as I mentioned, you're facing another proven vet. Obviously, I know you're not looking past him, but I got to ask you, like, in terms of a victory, where do you feel like that puts you in terms of the lightweight division, the lightweight title discussion?
Yeah, I would ideally go out there and capture this victory. Um, and then obviously I have to talk to my manager and see what that aligns like. But I would imagine that in a fight or two, I'm either number one contender after one or two fights. I would assume.
And in terms of the anticipated rescheduled matchup between Usman Nurmagomedov and Alexander Shabliy, how do you see that playing out? Like, kind of give us a breakdown of what that might look like.
Man, that's tough. That's really tough because like on my forefront, naturally kind of just want to go with the champion.
Mm-hmm.
The Magomedov, he's super good, but man, Shabliy is good. He's dangerous. That dude's good. So I can't give you a prediction on who. I was actually super excited for that fight, just because obviously I want to view it as a competitor standpoint, but more so from a fan. Like that's a really good matchup. That's a really good fight. Um, I can't give you a prediction on who I think is going to win, but I think that is going to be a good fight when that does happen.
And outside of yourself, from a competitive standpoint, do you see Alexander Shabliy as potentially the biggest threat to Usman Nurmagomedov at this point in his career?
Well, that's who he's scheduled next to line up. So yeah, I would say so. Another good one, obviously, is AJ McKee. He's obviously in that mix too. But yeah, I would say Shabliy is dangerous. Yeah.
Absolutely, man. Well, Archie, I appreciate the time, man. Thank you so much again. I want to give you the platform to shout out any sponsors you're working with, shout out your team, all that good stuff. I'll give you the final word.
Yeah, shout out all of my strength conditioning, my coaches, and everybody who's backs and supports me. Shout out my wife, keeping it tied down here at the house so it doesn't burn down while I'm gone. And then sponsors, I got My Fit Foods, great meal prep company. That's keeping me fueled now in my third or fourth fight. Alpha Country Training Nutrition is a supplement company. They do a great job. got good products, and actually they have some nice gear too. The shirt is them. And then a couple of other sponsors, like Denver Chiropractic. He's keeping my body in good check, keeping me in good shape, ready to go. Endurance Roofing, great company out here that does take care of roofing needs, and um, Metropolitan Insurance, great insurance company. So check those guys out if you are ever in the field of whatever their value is.
Absolutely. Well, Archie, I appreciate the time. I'm sure we'll chat again soon. Thank you so much. And thank you again for the time. Appreciate it.
Yeah, have a good day, Curtis.